Some atheists, deists, and agnostics pose the following question with the intention of creating doubt among Muslims. If Allah created the universe 13.8 billion years ago, what was he doing before that? Was he inactive or in some kind of eternal waiting? Let us analyze this question from a logical perspective and consider if it is truly difficult to answer, or if it reveals a lack of understanding of Allah's essence and His nature. To understand the response, it is important first to highlight certain conceptual errors in this question. Assuming that Allah could experience boredom or inactivity projects human limitations onto the Creator, who is beyond any such limitations. In our world, we tend to interpret actions through opposites, such as more or less, fast or slow. But Allah is free from these limited categories. His nature is absolute and is not defined by the notions we apply in our reality. Allah's omnipotence makes creating the universe as simple as creating a particle. There is no distinction in difficulty for Him, as His knowledge and power are infinite, and the creation of everything that exists, however grand, is as insignificant as a grain of sand before His greatness. Thinking that Allah could be subject to concepts like an action is, in fact, a foundational error, as it implies that the Creator could be subject to human conditions, which is incompatible with His eternal nature. Moreover, this type of question involves a categorical error, that is, a misapplication of human attributes to divinity, as it would be to ask what color a thought is, or what sound a feeling makes. Furthermore, questioning what Allah was doing before creating the universe presumes that He would be bound to time, when, in reality, time itself is His creation. Before the existence of the universe, the concept of before was not applicable, as Allah is beyond time and all created limitations. Time, as we experience it, began with creation itself. However, Allah is beyond any notion of temporality or succession. In short, this question arises from a misunderstanding of divine essence and the creation of time. Allah is independent and free from any notion of time or boredom. He is the Creator without beginning or end, and is exempt from all human limitations. Since human beings are subject to the limits of time, we often fall into the mistake of projecting our own limitations onto Allah. However, Allah is not comparable to His creation and is completely free from its characteristics. This idea can be understood through an analogy. A carpenter is not of the same nature as the table he makes, nor is an architect of the same substance as the building he designs. Similarly, Allah is free from the limitations of His creation, including time. For example, if water is poured on a wooden table, it may swell, whereas if it is poured on the carpenter, it does not affect him. Likewise, a building is made of materials like brick and steel, while the architect is made of flesh and bone. Time is a creation of Allah, and as such, has no effect on Him. Claiming that Allah is limited by time would be a misunderstanding, as it would fall into the erroneous belief of hulul, that is, the idea that the divine could inhabit the creation. This contradicts the teachings of all al-Sunnah, which completely reject the notion that Allah could be contained within His own creation. Allah is eternal and absolute. Two of His essential attributes are qidam, pre-existence, and baqa, eternity. He is without beginning or end. He is the first and the last, without depending on categories like before or after, which apply only to created beings. Thus, asking what was Allah doing before creating the universe is a conceptual error. As for Him, there is no before or after. Understanding eternity from this perspective is essential. As the wise Sa'd Nurse explains, azalea or eternity is a state in which past, present, and future are simultaneously encompassed, as if an elevated mirror reflected the entire line of time. If we imagine an infinite line where the past extends to the left and the future to the right, humans can only see the present. However, if we place a mirror at a high point, that mirror could reflect every moment on the timeline, from past to future. The higher the mirror, the more complete the reflection. If that mirror were at an infinite height, it could encompass all time in an instant, with no difference between past, present, or future. In eternity, time, space, and the limitations of creation do not exist as we know them. For us, understanding this concept is difficult, almost like describing colors to someone born blind, or trying to explain sounds to a deaf person. The notion of timelessness is something we can only glimpse, as it goes beyond the limits of human understanding. To better understand the concept of eternity and how Allah transcends time, we can think of a simple analogy. Imagine a USB memory stick that contains a 10-page document. When we connect this memory stick to a printer and start printing, the first 5 pages already printed would be the past from the perspective of the printer. The 6th page being printed would be the present, and the remaining pages would be the future. However, from the USB memory's point of view, the entire document exists simultaneously in one place. There is no past or future. Everything is accessible instantly, as a whole. For this reason, in the Quran, Allah sometimes uses the past tense to speak of future events, such as the Day of Judgment, paradise, or hell, which have not yet occurred from our perspective. Allah describes them in the past because, from His eternal perspective, everything happens in a single moment. The creation of the universe, the life of Adam, peace be upon him, our lives, the Day of Judgment, and the hereafter coexist without distinction of time. Allah, in His absolute nature, does not depend on time, nor is subject to it. Therefore, the question of what was Allah doing before creating the universe is a mistaken question, as it assumes that Allah is within a timeline similar to ours. To address this question, we must first understand that eternity has no before or after. In eternity, only Allah exists. The question of whether Allah was doing something in that pre-creation state is based on a human and limited understanding. The first thing we must remember is that Allah is not obliged to do anything. His perfection does not depend on His creation. Even if He had created nothing, His perfection would be absolute and immutable. The act of creation is an act of generosity and wisdom, and does not add or detract from His perfect state. As for the answer, Muslim scholars have proposed 2 valid perspectives on this matter, based on a deep study of the teachings of the Quran and the Sunnah. These opinions offer complementary approaches to understanding how Allah's eternity relates to creation and to the human concept of time. The first explanation is that Allah wished to manifest His beauty and perfection through creation. According to a hadith Qudsi, I was a hidden treasure and wished to be known. In this sense, the universe is a reflection of His generosity and wisdom. Before granting existence to creatures, they existed in His knowledge, in a potential form. Allah contemplated the perfection and beauty of His creation in this potential reality, and His wisdom led to creation itself to make those perfections known. On the other hand, some scholars take a different stance, explaining that we do not have revealed knowledge about what Allah did in eternity, as this topic is beyond our understanding. Just as the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, explained in the case of the soul, about which Allah revealed that it belongs to the command of His Lord, and of which humanity has only been granted a little knowledge, eternity, and Allah's actions are beyond our comprehension. Our role, then, is to remain silent on these topics, as trying to understand them with our limited capacity is not possible. In cases like these, scholars conclude by saying Allah knows best. Allah Alam, as the absolute and eternal nature of Allah, who is not subject to time or space, remains a mystery to us. In summary, Allah does what His wisdom and will determine always engaged in what is worthy of His greatness and sanctity. Since we have not been given specific information on these matters, we must accept our knowledge limitation. The Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, reminded us, think of Allah's blessings, but do not attempt to understand His essence. As believers, every good action we facilitate is an act of faith, and whoever helps in good shares the reward, while whoever assists in something harmful shares the consequence. Thus, I invite everyone to spread this message so it reaches more people, perhaps inspiring others to discover Islam. Subscribe and help this content reach farther. And remember that every good deed you facilitate grants you a portion of the reward. If I have made any error in my words, I ask for patience, for it comes from me and does not represent Islam or the words of Allah. I hope to see you in our next video. May Allah always protect you.